why don't people do the stuff that it takes to make money? Because they're doing everything else that doesn't make money. I think a lot of people spend a lot of time on everything that isn't revenue generating. I recommend most people start with services because it requires no capital and you require time. And when you start out, you use what you have. And so if you have no money and you only have time, then you trade the time for money. So one of the difficulties with skill is that masters have more milestones along the way. And so they're able to mark progress with more nuance. A beginner only sees kind of a binary outcome between it worked or it didn't work. And so I think one of the difficult things as a beginner is that there is a leap of faith. Like when you do your first week at the gym, you're not going to get results. But it doesn't mean that working out's wrong. It just means you're measuring on the wrong time horizon. And I think one of the things that has thrown a ton of beginners off is the understanding of volatility and volume. So basically, when you have a new business or a new endeavor, what appears inconsistent or volatile is typically a function of doing too little volume. And so it's like, one sale comes in every, a couple weeks, I'm still, but if we look at the activities that generate that sale, it's like you might have done 100 reach outs over 30 days, and then one of them becomes a sale. So it appears volatile, but really it's just, you got 1% and you're doing far too little. And so if we did 100 a day, then all of a sudden we might make one sale a day. And all of a sudden it seemed very consistent. And so the volatility is only a function of insufficient volume. And so I think that misconception is why many people who start out fail quickly or choose not to start, because they are measuring their feedback loop on too short of a time horizon. One of my really fun exercises is looking at whatever room you're in and knowing that everything that was there's a business behind it. But basically, I look back at stuff I did and see what worked better than other stuff. And then I say, okay, well, the top 10%, what things did they have in common? And then the bottom 10% or the bottom half, what things did those lack compared to the top 10%? I try and do a next batch of activities, whether it's phone calls, whether it's content, whether it's product iterations, that then do more of the thing that worked. And so that process has been, I think, the fastest feedback loop that I've had. But I think the first piece that people that they prevent themselves from doing is doing the 100 repetitions, because they think that it's the fallacy of the perfect pick. Like they're going to get it all right so that they don't have to fail the first time. The sales process. So basically advertising and sales have to become a consistent process with predictive metrics. We know that if we do 100 primary actions, whether that's 100 posts, $100 in ad spend, 100 reach outs, that will generate this many leads, which generates this many calls, which generates this many sales. And it could be on e-commerce, or it could be in a service or environment like I'm describing with calls. But fundamentally, you just have to get to that equation. And once you get there, then it's just inputs and outputs. And then you're just pouring as much in and then figuring out what the constraints are from you putting more in. First thing I spent a long time on was like, is there a micro framework that fits into this larger framework, which is like, how does anything scale? And then I try to make an acronym out of it. And I think I have a decent one. So S is start. You got to start. You have to do something. C is compound. You have to do more. So first you start, then you do more. A is augment. So then you do better. So it's like, okay, I've done a lot. That's the common factors part. So I'm going to try and do something better. L is leverage. So how can I get it to be consistent? How can I automate it? Both sides of that. And then E is expand. You do it again. So that's the loop. So that scaling loop exists on content at all levels, organizational structure, because that one, first we start, then we do more, then we do better, then we try and make it consistent and automate it, and then we expand to the next thing. That works for markets. It works all the way across. So that fundamental unit became how I thought through scaling all 8 departments, which is what I divide everything into. So it's customer service, product, sales, marketing, IT, HR, recruiting, and finance. I don't put legal in there because I didn't think it was, most people outsource their legal anyways for a while. And so those are the 8 functions that I had of the business, going from 0 to 500 people headcount. I did 0 to 100 million because no one would know what 0 to 500 people would be. But most businesses at 500 headcount are usually over 100 million. And it was easier to draw parallels on organizational structure rather than by revenue, because like a software company like school can do $100 million with 25 people, right. Whereas a restaurant might do $1 million with 25 people. And so doing it by revenue felt too, it wouldn't be valid or useful. And so instead I went by headcount, which had far more similarities. And so in thinking about that scaling, I broke it into, first there was functions, like what must occur in order for us to move to the next level. And then you have the people who do those functions. And then the third element is the operations that connects the people to the functions. And so that would be like training, meeting cadence, communication structures. That's all the operation side. And then the people is, what is the hierarchical, how does the hierarchy look? Who do you need to hire at what point, typically? And so that's basically the three sides of the pyramid in terms of thinking about scale. The scaling roadmap that I have that I came out is just the functions part, because it was already a monster. Basically it's like an hour plus long video going through each of the functions of each of the departments at each level. And then I vetted it with a few of my friends who have multi-billion-dollar companies, and they were like, dude, this is so accurate, it's freaky. And so I was like, I felt really good about that. And they helped me with a couple of them. Like, I would phrase it like this, and maybe this is, move this instead of here. But that micro framework of, we have to start, then we have to do more, then we have to do better, then we have to automate it or create some sort of leverage around it, and then we expand to the next thing, was the micro concept that I then applied across all departments to tease out the functions that happen at each level. Asking the question of like, okay, what would it take? What else would have to be true for impact theory to get 10 times the views in 12 months? It's not physically impossible. There's no reason for it to be. Like, somebody else there's another YouTuber right now who's going to do it this year. So what would it take for us to get that? Now, that might mean we'd have to get the smartest people. Okay, well, what does it take to get the smartest people? Well, probably more money, or maybe some chunk of the upside. And maybe I have and I might not get that guy, but there's probably 10 of those guys or 20 of those guys. And if I go to all of them, is it reasonable to believe that all 20 will turn me down? Probably not. Okay, what offer would I need to give them to make it worth it for them? And then, is what I give them worth less than what I get on the larger umbrella? And if the answer is no, then we make the trade. But I think a lot of people think in terms of, I'm here, how do I do more of what I'm doing, rather than what would have to be true for this to be 10 times bigger, and are the resources required to have that happen within my control? And oftentimes they are, but it's a move that's off the board. It's not in the immediate do more. And I'm all about do more, do better, like, to be clear. But every once in a while, the order of magnitude changes to the business happen when you do something different. And it's usually, and to me, that is strategy, is that you have limited resources against unlimited potential moves. There's a million things you can do, but you only have this much time, this much money, this many people. And so the best strategists, in my opinion, have the most visibility into the most potential moves and allocate the asset or the resources to the thing that gets the highest return. And I think the thought process of thinking, what would it take for this reality to be true, and then working backwards, has been one of the most fruitful and productive thought processes that I go through. For the beginner who's at zero, so we went sky, now we're going to go back down to dirt. The way that you'd frame that is, what would I have to do that would make it unreasonable that I didn't get a sale? Like, how much action would you be like, there's no way, there's no possible way that if I ask 1,000 people to buy something, one doesn't buy it? There's no way. And so then you take that and he's like, okay, well, just in case, I'll multiply by 10. If I ask 10,000 people, and the thing is that 10,000 is not that hard to do. Like, you hear that and you're like, 10,000, but like right now, if you think about that, you're like, well, I mean, yeah, obviously if I ask 10,000 people, okay, 100 people a day, 100 days, it's a quarter. And if right now you've been stuck in years of not making that first dollar, of years of wanting to start a business, then a quarter's nothing.